And we're live.
Hello! La, la, la. Hello, all welcome. It is Thursday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and this is almost our regular starting time.
We're all over the place. And, the holidays messed us up because Festivus was on Saturday. So then we skipped Monday because, the birth of Jesus. And so, that...
I thought he was born in August. Wait, did he even exist?
Yeah, I believe so.
I don't believe to.
I believe so. And I know that there's definitely, I'm joking about the literal timeline of that.
Mark Fabian.
Monday was the pagan tree ritual that everybody likes so much, which, I'm all about the pagan. So anyway, so here we are. We're here Thursday. We're going to try to get back onto a regular schedule. From this point, I think we'll be back to our normal schedule.
Well, just so
sort of, except for New Year's Day.
We'll give you a little bit of a heads up right now before we bring Steve in. So we are not going live on Monday. It is New Year's Day. We will be going live on Tuesday at noon. We will be interviewing Hill Harper, who is running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan. So that was working out with his schedule, and it just made sense,
And for people who don't recall, this is the gentleman that was offered money by AIPAC to run against Rashida Tlaib.
How much money was he offered?
I think he was offered $20 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to drop out of a Senate race, and he basically
run for a congressional seat. But
I'll take my chances.
Right.
So
they offered it to someone else too. Eventually they'll find a taker. There's always a taker.
Yeah, but I think from their perspective, they know that if you put up just some run-of-the-mill, corporate buy-me-off politician, that they're not going to beat Rashida Tlaib. They were going after somebody like Hill Harper because he's charismatic, he's well-known, and they're like, well, maybe he could beat her. But the truth of the matter is, even though we have a friend who thinks that Rashida could very well get knocked off, I don't think she's going to lose. I think that her people really have her back, and that's a big thing.
I think everybody should have her back, especially right now. Why? The fact that people are so threatened by the one Palestinian representative out of 535 people, and that's so threatening that we have to silence that one person. And this has nothing to do with my thoughts about her one way or another. Right. Seriously. It's just so absurd to me that the idea of just that little bit of representation is so threatening to people. I think when that threatens you, I really think you need to get some help.
Well,
I think you need to get some help.
I'll tell you who we need to talk to. We need to talk to our MMT representative, the person who knows this particular subject inside and out. And there is a lot of debate right now about how we spend our money, or do we even have money to spend? Because apparently we're broke. And
we're poor.
We can't spend any money. We could certainly give as much as humanly possible to Israel and Ukraine, but just understand, for us regular people, there is no money that they want to give us.
Because you've seen the debt.
Yeah. The debt ticker in Manhattan, that's some crazy stuff right there. You know him, you love him. He is the host of Macro and Cheese podcast from the Real Progressive, Steve Grumbine. Welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey, Steve, what's going on? You missed Festivus.
I know, man. I am just, I'm not a good small talker. I'm that guy that comes into the room thinking I'm small talking, and suddenly I'm talking about nuclear fission or something like that. So it's not, I don't have that gene.
So, I feel you. And it's weird because when we go to events, I have to do that stuff. But in my real life, I'm the person sitting in the corner with the dog. You know what I mean? I'm the person in the room that's sitting with the dog.
Oh, I would just hang out with the dogs all the time.
Well, right. But no, I agree. I don't like that either. It's ironic that that's seemingly what I do now, but I really don't. It's not my thing.
Trust me, I get it. I mean, I'm an introverted extrovert, and it's hard.
You know what I say? I say I am actually an antisocial extrovert.
Close enough. I mean, however you want to mix it, I truly, I'm so serious from the minute I wake up in the morning to the minute I go to sleep at night. I laugh a lot, talk about farts, I joke and stuff. But I'm always I drank 10 pots of coffee ready to go after the thing. And, I get it. It ain't everybody's cup of tea. I can't help it. I don't, aside from taking really good drugs or something like that to become another person, I don't know how else to do it. So I am me, and that is who I am.
Yeah, well, look, and I grew up with that. I grew up with my mom saying, "You're just so intense. Stop being so intense." That was what
here's what I get. Here's what I get, and this is really brutal for me because it hurts. Like, I'm an empath.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying this like there's no horn tooting, okay? But I'm more intelligent than stupid, right? So I'm a little bit more intelligent. And as a result of that, I'm also somebody who has that macro gene, which plays probably into why I like macroeconomics. But I have that visionary component that to some people who are very transactional and tactile and got to see it, they have no ability to work in the abstract. The things I'm thinking about are really off-putting at times, you know, because I'm seeing the big picture. I see it in different ways, and I have different ways of connecting things. Maybe I'm on the spectrum, who knows? But ultimately, I hear this stuff like, why are you always so negative? Oh my God, you're so negative.
Negative.
You're so negative. And it's like, no, I'm just absolutely someone who is consumed with trying to make change, and I can't shut it off for nothing. And here we are. So
Yeah.
generational change, talk about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, as you know, we have a friendly relationship with Carol Roth, who wrote You Alone, Nothing and Like It. Obviously, your perspective on the libertarian mindset of economics is completely batshit. And for the most part, it is correct. They are batshit. But there are some salient points that she made in her book, which I thought were important. She identifies the fact that there is this merger between the corporate state and the government, where the big issue comes into play is that she really goes on the offense against the idea that we have a fiat currency and we could just print money. Now, of course, you have to, obviously monitor how that money is printed. But I think the way that she's putting it, which is I think is the big issue here, because I think the problem is being identified. They are identifying the fact that because we print money, it's a problem because it's going into so few people's hands. Basically, the money gets printed and it gets controlled by a very small segment of the population. And so whether that translates into major tax cuts, mostly for the rich, the way I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that money is being printed, but it's not being circulated properly into society. Is that sort of in line where the disconnect is in terms of the way the sort of, free market libertarian perspective is trying to propose it and is missing that key component of this whole problem?
There's so much that you said in the initial statements. I was waiting to find out what I disagreed with her on, right? I was trying to figure out, wait a minute, hold on. I could have said what you just said, right, at the beginning.
Yeah.
Where it goes awry is, first of all, we don't print money. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart.
I love it.
But it's such an important thing. It is people think I'm batshit crazy, and I'm good with that.
There's no money factor. Well, there is. I mean, look, there is technically.
No, but
right.
Hold with the Grumster for just a second. Let me rock my jam here for a minute, okay? The problem is that when you say you're printing money, right, it fundamentally misses the entire point, and completely like wrong, to be fair, right? But it misses the big point, because everything she was saying in her statements, not including what Peter said, and I'll get to that in a minute, but everything that he said, she said, is very true. There is a merger of corporation and state. This is called fascism. Okay. This is definitional fascism, right? Corporatism is fascism. We can call it proto-fascism, but I don't think it is. I think we are 100% in fascism. And we can point to a lot of the different tenets of what fascism is. And we can look right now to what Biden's doing with the wall in the South. And he's got to match Trump rhetoric-wise. He's got to go after them, blah, blah, blah. So there's all this demonization of immigrants, demonization, calling them, making others, making them other, right? So there's all these components of fascism baked into what we have today. However, what is the part? Why does it matter about the printing money versus what I was saying? This is the key.
Yeah.
Government doesn't print money. It spends new money, creates it by its spending into existence. So when you say that it's not appropriating it properly, think about this. It's spending it to Halliburton.
Right.
It's spending it to Boeing.
goes. Right. It's exactly spending it exactly to them. They're not printing dollars and then taking them over with their chunk of money over to Halliburton.
So Jen, you and I, well, actually, Peter, you do contract work too in real estate. So you'll appreciate what I'm about to say. Both of you both have involved in contract work. The federal government is the el numero uno contracting entity in the world. There's no one that contracts like the United States government. And every one of those contracts are how it spends money into existence. Even when you have a program that we all benefit from, there is an end user that it's being spent into existence that's, administering the program, whether it be government employees, whether it be the people that receive Social Security checks. I know we think we pay into it. We can get into that some other time. We've talked about it actually at length, but just for a refresher. But it's important to understand this because it ties in what the author said, and it ties in what Peter was trying to say there. When you put the two together, what you have is a fundamental misunderstanding that the government is spending it there. We have privatized how money gets to the people, period. The government, by spending on these very, very select few companies that win the bids, that get the contracts, et cetera, when it spends that money into existence, it's into the economy now. Now where it goes from there is it trickles through the economy. So states, which don't create currency, this might be the big moment here, right? The federal government spent it into existence,
right?
But the states, in order to get taxes to fund the state, Maryland, Virginia, Florida, New Hampshire, wherever, right? These states have to take the money that was earned by those initial people they spent the money on, and then the workers that receive their pittance from the money that was spent at the government level down to them, they have to tax that so that they can fund their operations, okay? So it's not printing money. It's never printing money. It's always spending on contracts. That's how money gets into the system.
Okay, but wait, you at least just tell me though, because in reality, there is in fact printed money. So that also is something that does exist. Like, so it does.
So here's how it works. Here's how it works though. Okay. There's enough paper money and they're trying to get rid of all cash. They're trying to get rid of all cash. Okay. There's a major war on cash and has been one for a long, long time, but there's just enough cash in society to work in ATM transactions and ultimately tellers. That's it. I mean, people's desire to have money. If you went in there and said, I got $1 million in my bank account and I want it all in cash right now, they would look at you and they'd say, we don't have it.
No, of course not.
You would get a check, whatever, and then you would have to deposit. And then they would say, well, we'll give you this much in 6 days, this much in 20 days, this much in 30 days, whatever.
Right.
You would not be able to just cash that out because the banks, if you were a bank robber and you went into the bank, into the vault, there would just not be hardly any cash in there. I mean, it'd be more than you're used to having. Well, maybe not you, but there'd be more than the average person is. I'm just joking. There's more than the average person has, right? But it's not like a lot of money. It's just for transactions. And it's really you can't use cash to buy anything online. You can't use cash to really do any. In fact, there's some places that refuse to accept cash.
Yeah.
They'll only take digital transactions.
Yeah. There's a ton of restaurants in New York that are that now.
So when it becomes a problem from your perspective, when somebody says, well, we look at inflation right now, and despite what the Biden administration would have you believe, inflation is still a huge problem. Costs of living is high, costs of food, materials, and so on. So for somebody who says, well, you got to stop printing the money because that's the problem. Like I said, from where I stand, it looks like the real problem here is that the faucet's clogged. Basically, there's a handful of people are getting their hands on it and then cutting it off from everybody else. That's what I see.
So what you've got is a distribution problem for sure. The rich are keeping the money for themselves. These big corporate lords are keeping the money themselves.
Yeah.
And our government, because it is hey, laissez-faire, we're going to let you run your business as you want. Okay. There is nothing that it's not that the government can't do. It's the government won't do because it's not in its class interests to do. The government doesn't represent we the people. You can have all the well-meaning people on the streets, door knocking and phone banking and donating and everything else, feeling really in the feels about these elections. But in the end, the actual ownership class, the people that run the institutions, the overarching system itself is designed to benefit landowners and capital owners, okay, and not the people out of doors, aka you and I, all right? And so when you talk about inflation and you talk about stuff like that, it's important to follow the right people, not the libertarians, because they never really understand what they're saying. They might see a problem, but they get it all wrong. There is a lady, you need to follow her. She's brilliant. She's our tribe. Her name is Isabella Weber, okay? And she talks about how this is sellers' inflation. In other words, sellers are testing the boundaries of how high they can jack prices up. There's been study after study that shows this is greedflation. This isn't even a matter of supply chains anymore.
Exactly.
At some level, okay? So when you talk about the inflation is still up, this is the most perverse thing you're ever going to hear. By raising interest rates, all they did was a transference of new money spent to bondholders. And who owns bonds?
Rich
people that have money. Okay. Yeah. So this, to quell inflation, we're going to give the rich more money so they stop raising prices. Oh, they're printing money. Well, no, they raised interest rates, and those rich fucks are getting just like,
I like how you tried to mute yourself there for a second.
No, it's okay. At this point, it's like, we're
yes. So ultimately, there's a merger between state and corporation. And the reality is that, think about this. If I don't want a private sector, I'm willing to get rid of the entire private sector, okay, and make everything a collective public good, and allow production to be a public operation, allow every bit of this. It would take away that profit motive. It would allow each of us. There's a famous saying, and I'm always going to screw it up, but Marx said it, and it's fantastic. And it's ultimately from each their ability to each their need. And I butchered that, and I'm sure somebody can throw the proper quote into the chat. But
it's like from each from his means to his needs or something like that. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking. And no, and I agree, but where are those people?
So now one of the big things, the libertarian side of economics, is this idea that we have to go back onto the gold standard, that we have to peg the dollar against an actual hard resource.
Why would somebody want that, Steve? Like, what is the basis for them thinking that that's the way to go?
So because people are tactile, and they have a need for physicality, because abstraction is too hard for them to get, right? They fancy that by saying an arbitrary amount of gold is worth a arbitrary amount of paper, and blah, blah, blah. And so I've talked about this before, but I'll use this example. The gold standard is, in essence, we have a pool of money, the supply of money, okay? And it's the pizza pie, all right? Now, if I go to like a fancy restaurant where they make these really nice pies, probably too small and overpriced, but they're probably going to be cut in 6 slices because 6 looks neater, right? But when you go to the more kind of chop shops, you'll get an 8-slice pie, or maybe you get a 12-slice pie. I mean, they cut them into little slivers, cut them in square, whatever. If the whole pizza pie, if the whole pizza pie is all the money out there,
right,
and each slice is assigned a certain value of gold, every time I cut that slice thinner, I've devalued, I've debased the currency. See how that works?
Yeah.
But we're not on a gold standard, so that doesn't exist. We have a baseless currency that is driven by the tax. The tax, the ability to insert an obligation payable only, not in shitcoin, not in any other, libertarian fantasy, only in the nation's unit of account. That would be the way Japan does it. That would be the way China does it. That would be the way the UK does it. That would be the way Australia does it. And none of them have an Australian petro or a Japanese yen petro, a petro yen or anything else. So stop it with that crap. It's like, in the end, it's the ability to tax in your currency. And if you go back to the Civil War, another major, huge thing, we can also talk about Greece in this case, but the Civil War, the South had a fundamental issue with collecting a tax payable in the Confederate dollar. They were fundamentally against, they were those people, tax is theft, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened? The North didn't have that problem. The North said, well, we have the nation's unit of account, the U.S., we're going to tax in this, and that's that. And so the North was able to maintain its currency through the war. The South was unable to, and they experienced hyperinflation in the midst of war. And so this is one of those fundamental things. They could back it with cotton. They could back it with whatever. It doesn't matter, because what happens when you back something with a commodity? Somebody that has a lot of your commodity can fuck with your currency. So if the OPEC wants to play games with the value of that, as you've seen happen with Venezuela and others, they went ahead and dropped the bottom out of that thing, right? They just dropped it way down for a while, and it screwed South America up in the worst possible way, because those dummies tied their currency to the oil, okay? These are the things that people that don't really understand get all fapped up about, and we should do that. But you open yourself up to a whole different kind of abuse, a different abuser, okay? An external abuser, an external constraint. And once you do that, it's what the Bitcoin was made of. And you'll notice everybody can't win at Bitcoin, can they?
No.
Only certain people can win at Bitcoin, and they're the ones that hodl dump, and then everybody else loses. And then all of a sudden that one guy's in the back going, I'm hodl, right? Whatever. And ultimately it's a Ponzi scheme. You can't, because you got a finite amount. So everybody literally can't win, okay? But that's not the same way with a fiat currency. Literally, everybody could win. It's a fundamental mapping of how the world is.
They cannot wrap their heads around this. They cannot wrap their heads around that it is not a freaking pie. It's not a pie.
Steve, we have a good friend who is exceptionally adamant about Bitcoin, not about crypto, but about Bitcoin specifically, and feels that it is absolutely the future. Digital currency is the future. But we were having this conversation the other day where it just doesn't make sense from the standpoint of what is in any way practical. Now, if you were fortunate enough, as some of these guys clearly were, and they literally realized that all they did was hit the slot machine and roll 777s 1,000 times over when they just happened to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum at its, at its birth, if you will, back in 2009, I guess to some degree post the housing bubble, where this thing became a thing, and there were people who were able to pick up Bitcoin at what, like $50 a share, $100 a share. How is anybody going to get a Bitcoin today if the average Bitcoin is $40,000 a share? Like,
it's not
exactly. You got to buy bit dust. You got to buy dust, right?
Is that like the farts of the people that can afford the Bitcoin?
Yes. Look, I'm telling you right now. You have to look at all the podcasts I've done. I have talked to Bitcoin folks that really know it inside and out. Brett Scott, you ever get a chance to get Brett Scott on your show? He is the genius of all geniuses when it comes to not just Bitcoin and all that, but the overarching alternative views of money. He is a guy who knows systems from mutual credit to anything that's new. He has been in the back rooms learning about and working with the people. He's on everything. But this guy fundamentally understands fiat, okay? And where the problem comes in is that because people don't know, they have things to say. And because they hang out with people that don't know, but they have things to say, they all have things to say, and they still don't know, all right? And so we have been inundated with this from the left. You saw this during Bernie and Jill and all the rest of them, with people just fapping gums. Oh, of course I'm willing to pay more to give people health care. Of course I'm willing to pay higher taxes because it's going to pay for it.
Instead of just shutting that shit down.
Yeah. I mean, it's so painful.
It is.
Because you know their heart is in the right place, but they're just not, the sparks ain't there, right? They don't have the synapses firing. And so they just going along. They're like that 8-bit robot walking face first in the wall.
You know what, though? Now you're in my head, because whenever I hear anybody, even the most well-intended, well-meaning people that are on our team with our mission, and they say the things like, and then your tax dollars are going over to this, and your tax dollars, and I'm sitting there, and I swear to God, and I'm like, it's like fingernails on the blackboard every single time to me now because of you.
This might actually be the point of the whole discussion that Vav from New York points out. Bitcoin is the future of money if it becomes fully privatized. And if that does happen, then
I'm living on my farm. I'm going to have some chickens and shit. And
trust me when I say this, Bitcoin is propped up by fiat. People don't realize it because, when you cash out to get your earnings, you're not cashing out for more Bitcoin. You're cashing out for US dollars. And people, they pretend they're not doing that. And every person that does that, once they skip that part of it, I lose. If there was this much respect I had for them, it's gone in that moment.
Well,
in that moment, it's gone.
I was going to ask that. So, like, if something is worth $40,000 for Bitcoin, you're still measuring it against our currency. You're still right. So it's no different than a stock or any other investment.
You have to pay your taxes. And believe me when I say this, it doesn't matter whether you have faith in the dollar or not. That's the best part.
Right.
You can hate the dollar. But let me tell you something. When the boys in blue show up at your door and say, let's take a ride because you didn't pay your taxes, and you say, hey, I got a bunch of Bitcoin here. Hold on, let me get my phone out. Let me show you. It's in my crypto wallet, right? They're like, yeah, you better sell them and get us some US dollars to settle your thing. And because the point of the tax is not a funding operation, it's to ensure the monopoly power of the state currency. But I'm going to spend my tax dollars. No, your tax dollars are merely a way for the federal government to ensure, because if you don't use its currency, if it's it can't provision itself. It can't do what it needs to do to make ends meet. So you think you've got the government by the nuts with their Bitcoin, and it's the most hilarious. It's sad, actually. It's really sad because I think I'm with these guys in a weird parallel universe, because I want to bring this system down.
Right.
I want to bring it to its fucking knees.
You like the concept of saying, screw the dollar, we're going to do our whole own thing.
Oh,
but what they're doing is still dollar dependent.
All right. So
let's talk about taxes theft. It's the most hilarious thing.
We have our share of a lot of different supporters in the chat. And so we do have our fair share of libertarians who, for some reason, like our channel, probably because we're very civil libertarian. But when it comes to the economic component, there really is this idea that we don't need to be taxed. All taxation is theft. It shouldn't exist. Our friend Luke Rakowski from Tim Pool's show has been as loud as anybody in the world saying, you can have my taxes. You can take my taxes when you take it from my cold dead hands type shit. Like, where does this come from, and why is it so off the wall incorrect?
So first things first, we don't fund the government. The government funds us. We just don't realize it because we're too libertarian in our brains.
That makes it worse to me, because then it's like, then they don't even need to really have that much money. Then it makes it worse.
Exactly. So think about this, right? The government neither has nor doesn't have dollars. It spends them into existence.
Right.
The only way you have dollars that the federal government didn't spend, wait for it, is if you took out a loan, unless you took out a bank loan. Okay. That's the only way you have money that didn't come from the federal government. You took a bank loan out. So these folks love private debt more than anybody I've ever seen in my life. Stop the government from printing money. And then they're like, well, everybody go out and quickly take out loans to survive. Live on a loan, and then you can pay interest on your loan because that's what smart libertarians. Oh, wait a minute. That's an oxymoron. But the idea, though, is that the federal government is the monopoly issuer of the currency. They hate this because they want everything private. They really, really, really want to end that relationship of the government being the currency issuer. They know it's true. They've been crushed in every single debate they've ever entered into. I mean, talk about crushed, like a freaking tank rolling over bones. Ted. I mean, that kind of crushed, okay? But just like, HODL, they come back like a bad case of herpes, and they do it again and again and again, and it's wash, rinse, repeat. And for me, being a former libertarian, I feel particularly some type of way because I had to unfuck my brain. I had years of being a Paul bot, years of being a gold dickhead, dumb, foolish guy, right? Just an idiot, savant. I mean, just complete moron.
Like, just
right?
You now know that you were just so wrong.
So wrong. And like embarrassingly wrong.
Okay, so by the way, the parallel is that's me with Zionism, and it's exactly the same. Like, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, exactly.
There you go.
So I understand.
But the one thing I will say in defense of libertarians is simply this:
I'm a former libertarian, so go for it.
Yeah, no, the one argument that they do make, which I think is somewhat of what base Chad is trying to say, is that taxes, I don't agree, are immoral. They certainly are absolutely necessary. Now, are they corrupt and inefficient?
Oh, completely.
Absolutely.
But what does that mean? Define that. Help me. I got time. I don't.
Me,
that doesn't
my
make any
concept
sense.
of inefficient is making people suffer when they don't necessarily need to suffer, and you could still have a system that doesn't. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So we believe in taxing the bads, not the goods. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like as an MMTer, okay, which
it sticks and
that
carrots.
in a nutshell means nothing, really, right? Taxes are really about multiple things. One is to social engineering. I'm going to say we don't want a bunch of high-speed trading on Wall Street. Yeah. Wall Street speculation tax, right? It's called Pagovian. It's not a funding operation, but some would lead you to believe we're going to fund a Green New Deal with a Wall Street speculation tax, right? And so get rid of that. It's purely Pagovian, and Pagovian means syntax. It's something we're trying to do a behavior mod on. We don't want this occurring, so we're going to tax the bads. Okay. Yeah. But what they've done, and this is all a part of disciplining labor. Okay. What they've done is they've turned it into the income tax. And the income tax is taxing the goods. Now you're taxing the good, the people.
Are you suggesting that income tax isn't necessary?
I'm suggesting that income tax is not necessary, that you could do it a million ways. Because let's think about what are all the lures.
I agree with
all the
I do think income tax. I don't understand. They're like, would you get rid of income tax? And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I don't see what we need that for.
Yep. So ultimately, if you think about this, right? If I go ahead and I say, I pay a fine for parking my car in a bad parking spot, right? That's a tax. It's a sin tax because I don't want you parking in that spot. And at a state level, at a local level, that tax will serve to fund the police department. God forbid. I hate, anyway, but you get my point. It would fund those local operations. At the federal level, you can choose to do things differently, right? You can choose to put a threshold for how much wealth someone can amass, because nobody should be able to buy democracy. Nobody should have that much power over everyone. We should have a classless society where we all have a say in the pie, but we don't, because capitalism breeds hierarchy, it breeds suffering, and it requires a lower class to always buff the calluses off of the upper class's feet. And so we need to undo that, right? But so in the sense, I would do away with taxes for the poor. I would do away with taxes. I would get rid of the concept of the middle class altogether and say, we're not going to tax income. What we're going to do is tax wealth. We're going to tax, like, if you want to really get corporations to do better, to reinvest in themselves, to reinvest in their employees, don't tax the corporation. tax the C-suite. Make sure that the C-suite is taxed to high heaven. All their benefit packages. Hey, that $30 million parachute you got, guess what? We're taxing at 99%. Okay? We're taxing at 90%. So you'll get your whatever. But if you didn't do that, if you chose not to be a douchebag and sat there and reinvested in your corporation to make it viable, okay, we wouldn't tax you, and you could pay your employees more, and that would help everyone, because when everyone is able to partake in the economy and live life to its fullest, then people are genuinely happy and the crime goes down. Isn't it weird how crime goes up when we reduce spending, it goes down when we increase it?
Well, when, go figure,
weird thing,
we're
right?
desperate and hungry and things go wrong. Go figure.
Well, we just need more cops. That'll
more policing will help.
That'll solve.
But I want to touch on something really important, because I didn't leave being a libertarian because there weren't things about it that were interesting and cool, right? I left being a libertarian because ultimately, as much as I'm for freedom, I'm also for understanding that the least of these, the people that are struggling, the people that need help. I came from a Christian background, and guess what Christians believe? They believe in charity. What do they believe in charity for? Because they want to judge where that money goes. They want to say, I don't think you're worthy of that. See, to me, being a human being means you deserve to eat. Being a human being means you deserve to have a house. Being a human being means you deserve to have health care. Even if you're an asshole, even if you're a libertarian, you deserve it, right? So in the end, it's like, hey, I may not like you.
Very Christ-like of you, Steve.
Very Christ-like.
Yes, I'll give it to everyone, right?
Libertarians deserve to eat.
But ultimately, the thing is that every single thing that we do is based on competition, like not good competition, not like, hey, let's have a game and see who can come up with the best idea on how to cure cancer. It's like, it's a competition where we're going to put a patent on something for 30 years and we're going to hold it back from you so that you people in Africa can die from this disease we created, but we're not going to give you the cure unless you pay us in all those resources in the ground that you have. Unless you let us take over your country and privatize everything, we're not going to give you access to it. And this is the problem with private sector and this merger of corporation and state.
Yeah.
If we as people had a dictatorship of the proletariat, in other words, the working class, the people, the people, if we had a real legitimate democracy, right? Then you could do that. Look, anyway, I'm trying not to look at the chat because it just ends up making me laugh, and I want to be able to stay coherent.
Don't look at.
I'm going to private chat. I'm looking at the private chat. No more of that.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say that, the idea, guys like Murray Rothbard, okay, the libertarian, poster child, believed that parents had no responsibility to even feed or clothe or house their children. In the end, that's force. It's coercion. It's wrong, right? It's this weird kind of wrong. But to live in a society, in other words, this sounds cliche, but it's true. To live amongst people, to share and work, to not dominate one another, but to work cooperatively, okay? That is something that I think libertarians would look at from a voluntarist perspective. They say, hey, I don't want you forcing me, but maybe I'll do it. But that's just the same as Christians going, maybe I'll give charity if you deserve it, right? And so there's a lot of the same kind of evil from the Christian side as there is the libertarian side. And everybody says, well, what are you going to do? Force me to save that guy laying in the street? If you have the ability to save the guy in the street, I'm really thinking maybe you oughta, right? And so in the end, if I can't coerce you, then I need to create systems that are built to do that work. If you're not going to volunteer and be counted on in times of crisis, if I can't guarantee that you're going to do that, if I got to wait to see if my breath smells good enough for you to give mouth to mouth, or if my skin color is the right color, or if my gender is the right gender, or if my whatever, right, my hairstyle is the right hairstyle, or whatever, then you'll give it to me. Then I'm worthy enough, right? That's some bullshit in a chef's salad. We need to build systems that are public purpose, reinvigorate the public. So, I didn't understand all this years ago. I really didn't. Because I see what they see. It's not fair the way they do taxes. It's not fair the way corporations and government work together.
But here's the thing. They don't believe that they should have to pay for other people's education. They don't think that they should pay for other people's healthcare. That is not their problem. That every each to his own. They don't care. That is because of a fundamental false scarcity narrative that we've been taught about money. Because they don't understand that the money that the government spends, the money that the government spends is public money. We just don't feel it that way because today, the way the government spends it, it's always to the rich. It's always to these corporations. It's always for war. We always cry poor mouth the minute we give a nickel to anyone other than that, right? But what is this? It's nothing more than the government saying this is what we prioritize. It is the government. And so if you look and you say, wait a minute, if that's the case, there's 80% of the people, these libertarians may say it completely foobar. These Democrats may say it completely stupidly. These Republicans may say it really asininely. But in the end, they want fairness and they want people to do well. But they're afraid that if they allow others to do well, somehow or another, it'll take away from what they have. So then they start holding it. And they say, I don't want you to do well because it's going to hurt me to do. I won't do well if you do well. And that's that zero-sum thinking. Yes.
Maybe somebody should read The Richest Man in Babylon. That might actually.
Yeah. You know what? A Republican libertarian friend sent that to me, and I have that book, and it's not really like my cup of.
Yeah, but it's almost like you would tell them that you read this book and you really don't get it, do you? Like you don't get this idea that there really is opportunity for everybody. This isn't a zero-sum game. You know, the idea of, why do we need tuition-free trade schools? Because people should be able to learn a skill to make them a well-rounded person in society.
But just think about what you're saying. Think about what you're saying. What do we prioritize? What do we value, right? And if we had a real government and we had real elections and we had real representatives that were educated and understood, okay, if we actually had those things,
libertarian,
it would be a totally different story. Everything would be very different, right? I mean, like, imagine this. Do you guys like sci-fi shows and stuff like that on Netflix? Do y'all ever binge watch anything like that?
I live with some sci-fi people. I myself am not generally a sci-fi person, but
there's a show called Altered Carbon, okay? It only was on for 2 seasons. It was a really good show, but they killed it after 2 seasons. Why? Because it cost too much to make and there wasn't enough viewership. So they said, oh, well, it's not worth doing then.
Yes.
Because you can't make profit off of it.
Right. Art, that's the whole, there's no art for art's sake.
That's it. It's everything is that way, though. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So when people talk about work, defining work, and what we value, I talk to y'all and y'all say UBI, constantly fucking get the UBI crap at me, right? And it's like, Jesus, Lord, you lack imagination. And it's like, let's do a job guarantee, because what I'm saying to you is the only work that is currently compensated is work these shit fucks at the top think is the work that they want to finance because it makes them money. There's all this stuff, huge amount of stuff that isn't worthy of money. They don't think of it as valuable.
I read The Case for a Jobs Guarantee. I read that. I've read so many of the books now. Like every time we kind of read another book, but I think it's the only way.
Is it transitional or is this the long-term strategy? I don't know, because to me, I really, really want to be in a place where I can breathe, where I can relax, where automation serves everyone, not just the wealthy few. And I think a lot of people that want a UBI think the same way, right?
Yes.
But when you think about that, it's a fundamental difference in understanding, because as it stands now, if you do it that way, the only people that benefit from the automation are still the rich.
Of course.
You're just a consumption unit funneling your UBI into their pocket.
Right? UBI is the same thing as a flat tax. Like a UBI,
all these trash ideas. Yes.
Right. It's one of those things. So which inherently is regressive. So,
absolutely.
So even though you're seeing it, okay, I'm getting money it's money for nothing. And if everybody's getting it, then what's the value of it? And that's the thing, right? See, you've taught me well. I understand this. What I really need help with really is explaining to people how a job guarantee works practically.
Okay, very easy. Watch this. Let me give it to you for because I'm like zeroed in on this, right?
Yeah.
There's several different models. Let's just assume hypothetically that all the volunteers in nonprofit organizations were suddenly considered to be employees of the job guarantee program. In other words, the nonprofit says, I've got 50 people that work for me, and they go into the job guarantee and they get their paycheck from the government, from the federal government. So it's administered locally, but it's paid for nationally. It's paid for by the federal government. All right. That's one model. You can use a nonprofit model. The other one is, and this is the one that I got excited about because I'm a Scrum Master. I'm a project management guy. I'm a guy that likes to really think about how to make things work and piece together and kind of like architect of sorts. Okay. And I thought about what an democracy enhancing thing would a job guarantee be, where you go down to the local, wherever you vote, and you sit there in your town hall and you have a job guarantee meeting every month. Every month they determine what work they want to compensate in the community. And every month, whether it be playing chess with an old man at the local whatever, whether it be reading children's book to a person online, whether it be teaching people how to paint, whether it be reading books, or whether it be, making movies, whatever it is, whatever you want to do in your community, you can fund with the job guarantee. So it's not a replacement for higher paying work though, right? It could eventually transition to that being the way it is. Like we just do the thing that we want to do that fills a void within the community, because our communities right now are very, very transactional. I don't see a lot of the people I live around. I don't know my neighbors anymore. I live in an online world. Like last night I went to a job Christmas party. First time I'd really been out amongst the people I work with in 4 years, And so you think about that and it's like, wow, okay. But what if you reinvigorated the community by having those jobs? People would suddenly show up and be like, hey, I'd like to be able to, I like surfing and I'd like to be able to teach people how to surf. But while I'm out there, I'll collect water samples for the national health, whatever, take jars and take samples, whatever. Like there's ways of blending and combining the things we want to do. And that's why everybody says, well, what about me? I'm handicapped or I'm handy-capable or I'm otherly able or whatever. It's like, guess what? We can make that work too. Like I had one of the most wonderful aha moments ever when I was interviewing one of the leading MMT economists, Scott Fulweiler, and you could check out my interview with him on Macro and Cheese sometime. But we were talking about the job guarantee, and his wife is disabled. And it was a really emotional moment while we were going back and forth. But I was like, just imagine that she would like to do something. She doesn't want to just sit there on the couch or whatever. It's got nothing to do with working for the man, arms along like you've been carrying a load. It's got to do with self-actualization. And what if you could create something for people who are otherwise able in only different ways to allow them to participate in building up the community by adding value in some way and having it valued and compensated? There's so many ways of doing these things, right? So that ultimately you have however many people in the community, you have unemployment goes up for a little while, and all of a sudden you see people roll into the job guarantee because it's like, hey, there's not work out there and I want to work here. Or they don't like what they're doing and they don't want to be held hostage. And they say, I'm going to go work a job guarantee job. I'm good with that. I might take in an extra roommate. I don't care. I don't want to work for that guy. And so now you've got a countervailing force against capital that allows people to make choices, right? But real choices.
Yeah.
Because see, here's the one thing we talked about. And I think that if you read the case for the job guarantee.
I did. Well, I listened to it.
Okay, that's reading to me because my eyes suck too, right? So when I think about this, I think about what is the one thing that is literally impossible to double up, right? I can only be in one place at one time, per se, right? Now, maybe I can do it electronically, be all over the place. But in reality, though, if I'm working 40 hours, I can't work another job for those 40 hours.
Right.
Okay. So if I'm a capitalist and I'm trying to bleed you away from your money and say, I'll give you $5 an hour because you've got a UBI or whatever, so I'm going to subsidize my shit wage with your UBI. They can't do that because I can say to the capitalists, I'm making a living wage with benefits that far exceed what you have.
Right.
And I'm doing just fine. You've got to meet or beat that to hire me. But it doesn't do that with the UBI. UBI is purely a pass-through to the wealthy because you're going to pay your electric bill, you're going to do whatever you've got to do, and that money's going to go in and out.
It's regressive. People don't understand that.
It's extremely regressive. And I've been screaming because it is a Trojan horse. Libertarians have wanted a UBI forever. Why? Because they want to dismantle the social safety nets. Okay? I don't like our social safety nets. Let me tell you this. I don't like a welfare state. I like citizens' benefits. I like shared prosperity for all through reinvigorating the public purpose, through absolutely creating a commons, common internet, common everything, common education, commons. And if you want to learn something that's off the beaten path, I'm not going to stop you, right? This is freedom. This is the libertarian, the civil libertarian freedoms that we talk about.
Pay for other people's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The problem is ownership, right? And when you take away private ownership and you create a ruling class of the people, not of the rich, you have a fundamentally different class analysis that you can take as to what's happening in your life, how you view the people around you, how you view the work you do, the ownership you have of your own labor, not just of the money you make, but of the product and everything. Right now, people make a widget and they're completely disconnected from the overall product that they make.
Yeah.
And so there's a disconnect and they're like, well, how come you sell that product that I made for $100,000, but I only make $7.50 an hour or whatever? And it's like, well, you only make the screw. You don't make the whole thing.
You're
make
not
the whole thing.
Right? The whole thing. The person at the top is. That's the reason they. Exactly. Oh, you know, something I wanted to say that I also really thought was clever, and when I was listening to about the case for a federal job guarantee, if you imagine your unemployment office and just imagine turning it into an employment office, it's really not that complicated. It's really not that complicated. So it would be administered in that way. It would be administered. You could administer the employment just like you administer the unemployment, right? Yes. So it's like you're paying people to not work. How about we just pay them to do something productive?
Yes, something that makes their community better, whatever that is, right? And one of the things that I think is really, really, really interesting, and I really go through a lot of this in my head because people are just trapped in this like box, there is no alternative. It's just this very narrow world that I live in. I can't envision anything else. And as a result of that, it's very hard to get people to transition. I'm not going to mention his name, but I did an interview with a really nice guy who has all the right sensibilities about all the right things. And in the middle of this interview, he said, and our tax dollars are going to Israel or to, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's blah, blah, blah. And I said, listen, I want you to understand, not only does none of us want those dollars to go to Israel for this purpose, but that just shows you by saying your tax dollar is going to it, you're fundamentally not understanding that you didn't even have that much to say in it. You didn't even have that much to say in it. It's a ruse. By pretending your tax dollars do that, it gives you agency in the system, which you have none of. That's the problem right now, is that we don't have agency. And so the misunderstanding of taxes, of money, of where it comes from, the role of banks, the role of Bitcoin, the role of all these things is intentional to keep us from believing that we all can have shared prosperity. And this is not foo-foo. Trust me when I say this. I am still, there's still enough of that Republican dickhead in me. There's still enough libertarian asshole in me that I don't go foo-foo. But when comes down to it, sometimes the things that the foo-foo say is really very logical and very brilliant. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Jill Stein, years ago, when she was after Bernie collapsed and she took the reins, okay?
Yeah.
Jill Stein, you can go back and look at her platform. There was a lot of good things in there, some really bad things too, which I'm not going to get into right now. But the good things, she was one of the first people to quote what you just said about, instead of having an unemployment office on every corner, having an employment office on every corner. The problem is she couldn't get over, because she had really moronic economic advisors, and they still do, right? They're still completely economically illiterate in there. And as a result of that, it makes her a non-starter for me. I love her to death. I've been on the stage with her a few times. I talked to her a bunch. You know, I care for her. She's a smart person, but when it comes to money, she can't get it. And she came out on one of the shows. I think I was being interviewed by Ajamu on his old show, or maybe they were doing another show and I was listening in, but we had a huge MMT army show up, okay, and say, hey, don't forget about MMT. And she goes, well, MMT is one way we could pay for it. And once she said that, I knew fundamentally she doesn't understand what she's talking about. And it's not mean. I'm not being mean here. I cared about her. I voted for her. I stood up for her, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't understand money. She doesn't understand money, and the whole Green Party doesn't understand money. And as a result of that, they have their Section M of their platform, which is FUBAR. But these are things that if we could get in there and explain, but you got to understand that this system is not for we the people. It's not for us littles. It's for the rich. And so believing that we can vote people into the system and vote away their power and vote away, it's kind of funny. It's sad and funny all in the same breath. So my shtick on all this is, MMT is a tool to radicalize. It's not a tool to actualize, because right now, even though it's in place, we don't have any access to the power. We are not in position to have power. So we've got to build dual power. We've got to build power outside of the electoral process, outside of this, and allow this system to collapse under its own weight. This is where the guys...
It kind of is.
Well, it kind of is, and yet it kind of isn't. This is tales we tell ourselves, right? Talking to Michael Hudson, even. I love it. Michael Hudson talks to Ben Norton and a lot of the other folks out there, and Danny Haifong and others. Let's be fair. Michael Hudson is a big name on the left, right? Really neat guy. We've talked to him a bunch. We help him out with his webinars. We do a lot of stuff with Michael Hudson. But Michael Hudson will talk about the BRICS. And out of that, you'll hear the same people that hear him talk about it 5 minutes later say, yeah, when they get rid of the petrodollar, it's this and that. And it's like, what? I just heard Michael Hudson. He didn't say the thing you just said, but you just said this thing. And you say it as if Michael Hudson said it. But then we get him on there, and we've got quotes. We take him to task. Michael, your people are out there saying these things. Oh, well, no. That's not how it is. Of course, taxes don't fund spending. Why would they say taxes fund spending? And it's But you get back, and the guys will say the same thing over and over again. Why am I telling you all this? Because I can tell you 100 times this. I've been on your show quite a few times. We've been on each other's show. We've been with Jordan. I can tell you this stuff. And you're trying. And I can't tell you how pleased I am to hear that you read The Case for the Job Guarantee. It's really, that means something to me. I'm not joking. That really, if I didn't have a camera on, I might even messed up a little bit for real. Like, I'm really happy you said that, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of saying the same thing over and over again to friends and other allies. It's like, wait a minute, you want me to take your stuff about Gaza very seriously. You want me to take your stuff about COVID very seriously. You want me to take your stuff about this very seriously. Well, I'm telling you that I have spent my entire activist life as a macroeconomic activist, and I'm telling you how it is, and you can't remember one basic thing. You have no respect, no anything for what I'm saying, but I'm supposed to value what you're saying. And it's like, it's not quid pro quo, because I understand what I'm saying requires a lot of cacophonies to occur. There's got to be this, right?
And it's
so I've got to
complicated.
just
It is complicated. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that I always completely understand it, because I don't completely understand it.
But you understand enough, though, that the federal government is the currency creator. Even if it farmed out, even if it made a contract with private banks, even if it, I don't believe this to be the way it is, but let's just say hypothetically, the only thing federal about the Federal Reserve is the name, blah, 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 whatever, right? Let's say you're one of those quacks, right? Ultimately, the government created a law. The Federal Reserve can't create laws. The federal government, Congress, created a law. It created the U.S. dollar, the unit of account. It then, in turn, contracted, if you want to say, let's just keep the public-private partnership thing going here. They contracted central banks to handle that part of it. Loans to people, private sector, loans to banks, to clear payments between banks. They farm that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. I mean, that's not how it is really, but I just try to keep it where other people are, right? So within that space, the government itself is still God here, if you will. I mean, the government is, and despite it pretending like it's impotent and impossible to do these things, ultimately it is the currency creator. It is the owner of the currency. It's a unit of account. So unit of account is just an inch or a pound or a yard or whatever measurement, a degree, you name it. That's all a dollar is a measure. So who cares if I gave them power of the spreadsheet? Ultimately, the only way money gets spent is when the federal government writes a law and says, spend this money. Okay. And so if you can understand that part alone, that banks give credit, the federal government spends new money into the economy that is not have to be paid back. It is a net financial asset in the world.
Yeah.
A loan is not a net financial asset. A loan has to be paid back. So that fundamental distinction that the federal government issues currency, that the states are currency users, they cannot do the thing that the federal government did. If you can understand that, you're a long way there. And then if you can realize that China doesn't use US dollars. So when China sells goods and services into the United States and gets US dollars, it looks at all this money and says, well, what do we do with it? What they do with it is they park it at the Fed and then they buy bonds to earn more US dollars. Why do they want more US dollars? Because it helps them facilitate transactions and buy things in the U.S., buy things from the U.S., the things that Chinese want to buy that's made in U.S., whatever that might be.
I don't
They
know.
go ahead and use that.
Is that all weapons?
But it doesn't. It means nothing, though, in the end. Do you understand? No. It means nothing. So China can take those U.S. dollars and transfer them into British pounds, pound sterling. They can say, we want it to be in Japanese yen, and they can take it out in the Forex market, swap their currency for a currency they want to save in. But they don't use US dollars, so it doesn't matter. All that China is guaranteed is a balance sheet, is an invoice. Basically, here's your money. But what are they going to do with the US dollars?
What are they going to do with that? Say, okay, you owe us this money. Okay. All right, here's your So what are they do? And I wanted to also tell you the other thing. So then I went down the whole rabbit hole with degrowth when I started reading the Jason Hickel book. So I read, I've gone down that whole, rabbit hole.
Good path to be on.
It is. And I really like that as well. But yeah, no, to me, the jobs guarantees. And no, I don't. And people always say the same things, that it's not going to solve everything because there's always people that can't work. Yes, there's programs for those people too. And in the universe wherein Steve and I live, those people would be cared for
their particular jobs as well. Chronic unemployment can be solved by having people that will ultimately be able to work, because again, that's the thing about tuition-free public college, tuition-free trade schools, being able to actually become a more functional member of society. Again, common sense.
Read Jason
and so you do have to constantly remind people over and over and over again.
I read a lot.
Steve, how can people find your work? As always, what a way to close out the year. Although we may see each other on Saturday.
No, and I just want you to know,
I am not going to be able to be there, unfortunately.
Okay.
I just want to tell you that. I take what you say very seriously. You were one of the original people when I started getting it, forever ago. And the fact that like now you're a friend, it's very cool to me. But so like I take what you say very like generally I read when you recommend. I don't always understand everything. I do the best I can with my small mind, and try to get what I can. But no, I think that it's important. Like, and I think that it is the basis for everything else. So whenever I hear,
thank you for pointing that out, Rob.
Yes, I do. No, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
We need to be clear about that. But no, and I think it's incredibly important when people start talking about things like the Green New Deal and all the environmental stuff. That if we don't get to this foundation, we're never getting. Like I really do get that.
Yes. And so if you understand that now, then you understand where my urgent comes from. It's not like I don't give a rat's patootie about MMT, right? MMT, I said this the other day. MMT is a gateway. It is not a destination. You have to get the MMT to be able to get the rest. If you don't get that,
we'll look into using that. We'll look into using that.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Exactly. Well, anyway, let me answer Peter. Say you ultimately you can catch me on Macro and Cheese. It comes out. It's a podcast. It comes out every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time. It is audio, folks, so you don't watch Macro and Cheese. You can listen to it anytime you like.
It's very boring, by the way, visually. I don't mean to
say,
but nothing happens on the screen, but I do watch.
we do have, just so you know, our guy, Kami John, puts together a video now where we use it because on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., we have something called Macro and Chill, which is a Zoom call.
Yeah.
People come, they listen to the podcast in 15-minute increments, and they communicate with each other. They share with one another. It's only been going on for a few months now, but Jonathan Cadman, who you saw in there, Virginia Cuts, VA from New York, her and Kami John, who I don't know what his YouTube handle is, but I know he's in the comments. I think he is like dissident. I don't know who he is, but anyway, is a gateway fiat. Yeah, there you go. Whatever. Ultimately, if you can figure this stuff out, fine. But Tuesday nights, 8 p.m., Macro and Chill. Saturday mornings, 8 a.m., and anytime thereafter, Macro and Cheese on Spotify, Audible, YouTube. Actually, we do release it, I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday on YouTube after we've given it a run on iTunes and stuff like that. And then I have taken a long hiatus from Rogue Scholar. I was having a crisis, if you will, of conscience because I was getting a lot of pushback from people I value. And I figure if I show up and you're not there, what am I doing this for? And I stopped doing it because I got really upset about
I like Rogue Scholar. And if you're not going to, I love the intro music. It's the best.
Well, I'll be back to doing Rogue Scholar in the new year. And I will plan on, my goal here has changed somewhat, right? The days of voting for Bernie and pushing for electoral solutions are long over for me. Everything for me going forward is a class analysis and understanding the role of money and understanding how we can move forward. We got to look backwards, but not repeat the past, but look backwards to understand what's been done. We got to understand the present, and then we got to build the future. And from my vantage point, I want to be able to take that class analysis. I want to be able to take that understanding of money, and I want to be able to take all of that information, synthesize it, and work with people to build that foundation. Because I really believe in my heart of hearts, we have got to build mutual power. We've got to build parallel institutions. And I've been saying it for years, and the Rogue Scholar will be the vehicle by which I put that out there. So,
okay, well, listen.
That'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon.
If you ever want to have an episode, if I could ever come on there, we would just have to call it Rogue Scholarly. Okay, I don't know that I would. It's called Rogue Scholarly. And how do I get an invite to the Macro and Chill party?
You know what? It's on our website. You go to realprogressives.org. I mean, I'll send it to you for real because it's really a lot of fun. It's a Zoom call, and we've had anywhere from between like 25 to 50 people in there. Yeah. Just depends on the topic.
Right, it's intimate. So some weeks are more interesting than others to every different person.
Absolutely. I mean, we're trying to get everybody in there together because each of these things, full disclosure, the way that I loop all these podcasts together, there's links. Even if this may not be your jam, it doesn't matter because it feeds that larger picture.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to build a mosaic of all these concepts and linking them together with class analysis. It's tough because the people that understand class don't understand money. The people that understand money tend to be from the elite class. And so I'm just a man of the people. I'm a regular dude. And I'm trying to make it accessible for regular people, especially the people that are pissed. I want people that are angry and not willing to take it anymore, that are not just wallflowers, that are willing to step up, learn, and be part of it. And so there you go. There you go. Hopefully that was educational. I always wonder, because when I'm doing my own monologue, which I tend to do because that's the way Rogue Scholar typically is, I don't have to worry about banter. I can just go with a thought and keep going.
Yeah.
When I do interviews, it's more challenging because I know that you all would like to talk, so-and-so would like to talk, but I'm like, got so much to say because there's so few people talking about this stuff. And when I try to put it out there, it's like, yeah, I'm afraid if I stop there, you're going to miss it and you're going to go here. And so there's this need to fill in the gaps, and it's tough.
Yeah.
I sometimes miss the balance, but if you can put up with me, I'll do it over and over for you.
We're always grateful to have
Always.
you, brother, and obviously have a
Miss
happy
you on
New
Saturday.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes, I'm going to do family stuff for a change. So
As well, that's all good.
Yeah.
Hey, how far are
Absolutely.
you from a place called Kennett Square? Do you know where Kennett Square is?
That's Philadelphia.
It's
Isn't it?
outside of there. Well, it's almost closer to Wilmington.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, I'm a fair clip from that. But I will tell you a little tickler here. My passion has become learning about mycology too. So MMT and mycology are the two things that consume my, and putting this all together. So if you ever want to talk offline, I'm all ears for that as well. That's another favorite subject. So anyway,
It's all good, man. Thanks for coming on, Steve. It's always good to see you.
you got it. Take it easy, everybody.
See you, brother.
Thanks for having me. All right. Bye-bye.
Love Steve.
So it is important that we do understand the economics of our country. It's also important.
Yeah, I do the best I can. Like, in all seriousness, like I understand probably more than most people. And I am not very good in terms of like numbers and math stuff. Like, it's very hard for me. A lot of the technical stuff is very hard for me. So I do the best I can, but I also am inclined to just surround myself with people that really understand it, who I trust their judgment and know they're on my mission, and just say people like Steve and just say, yeah, what he says.
Danny, thank you so much for the $10. And for anybody who is looking to contribute, obviously any super chat is always welcome. But
Always
of course,
welcome.
if you are more inclined to want to donate, but do not want to give Google any of your money, which is something that I know a lot of you would
I mean, even though it is
agree with.
exciting that we've been remonetized.
Yes, and of course, it's always nice to see the dollar signs flash across the screen.
It is. It's. I'm back to getting those emails about my Google AdSense account. It's nice.
But you can also go to Cash App, $GenChange.
And that comes
However much that
directly
you want
into
to
our
contribute.
account, and it is into the Gen Core. It goes into the Gen Core account.
Or if you would rather become a patron, which we would certainly appreciate, for as
We
little as
do.
$5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. You get the Lulu sticker as an intro.
Everybody gets a Lulu sticker.
Everybody gets it.
Everybody gets the Lulu sticker. No.
Still might become president.
No, look, we like having patrons, and really the best thing that I have to offer to patrons is direct communication. That's the truth. And I do, and I message with people, and people know if you're a patron and you send me messages on Patreon, I respond pretty expeditiously.
$25 gets you the Gen Change jersey. Silky smooth tri-blend jersey style.
Such a dork.
No,
Actually, the truth is you could also have the purple tee. You could have
the purple tee
either.
as well.
You could have either.
Or you can watch the ads, and that helps as well.
That's so helpful. Are you kidding me? That's so, actually, the best thing for people to do is every time you watch us, share it with a few people.
Here's one more
That's
thing.
way helpful.
Here's-
Like, sharing it is way helpful.
And handwritten notes. See, it's always
You always are gonna, and the thing about the patron is it's just really, I feel like it's a nice community for me, like to know really who are the people that are really supportive of us. It's really nice.
so. And also remember one thing that we really appreciate: once our stream is done, the first thing we ask you to do is go to that finished stream and make a comment. Make sure you hit the like button. It really helps with drawing more people in towards our viewership.
We have some cool things coming up.
We do have some cool things.
So on Saturday, we're having a little bit of a different thing this week.
So we're actually closing out the year not on our, well, actually, technically we will close out on our channel.
Right.
So we're going to have a little bit of post-game show, a post-game commentary. So we will be the last guests on Jordan Chariton's Status Coup end of the year live stream.
On Saturday.
We will be on live with him at 4 p.m. So just keep that in mind.
And then we'll go on to, and we'll do a wrap up on our channel.
Around 5 o'clock. So it'll be for about a half an hour, just end of the year recap and all of that stuff. So we hope you guys will tune in to Status Coup on Saturday for Jordan's end of the year, which will have lots of wonderful guests. And
He's going for a long haul.
He's going for a marathon, about 4 or 5 hours.
That's long, especially for Jordan to do that.
Yeah, he'll go to bed right after.
I'm sure he will get the early bird.
Have the quiet. I felt so good for the early bird. And so make sure that you tune in for that. And then, as I mentioned on Tuesday, we are going to be interviewing our first candidate, and how ironic, of the election season will actually come in 2024. Go figure. We actually waited until the actual election season officially begins. On the eve of the Iowa caucus, we will be interviewing Hill Harper, who is running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan, a state that a lot of our eyes are on. So
this just came through to me. That's fun.
And Lauren Boebert wants to know.
No, Mike McCorkle wants me to send him money.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I don't know you, so we're going to say stop.
And we really appreciate you, Donald, and obviously anybody else.
I too. I am actually, and I will toot my horn. I am one of the original Status Coup members. Like when it first became that there could be a membership, because I was a member on the thing, and then I I don't know. I've been there a long time.
So for those of you who have been paying attention to current events,
got to get her news.
Yes. So for current events, obviously we have a lot of things going on, but of course, most notably, the GOP, in my opinion, the GOP establishment anyway, has made their choice in terms of who they would like to see replace Donald Trump.
Clearly, it's Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley is clearly their gal. This is who they want. And she has had quite a few gaffes, not surprising. But this gaffe was a big one.
It's not a gaffe.
Well, no, actually,
it's
a moment of clarity.
I think it's a moment of clarity, and I think it's also the virtue signal to who her real people are. That's what I think. Because
Please, what was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was? I'm sorry?
I'm not running for president. I want to see your view on the cause of the Civil War.
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government. We need to have capitalism. We need to have economic freedom. We need to make sure that we do all things so that individuals have the liberties so that they can have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do or be anything they want to be without government getting in the way.
Thank you. And in the year 2023, it's astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery.
What do you want me to say about slavery?
You answered my question. Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah, but we're not done, because if you think that this was a moment in time where Nikki Haley is just thinking about running for president, and she certainly is, it turns out that
there was some damage control to be done.
She had a little bit of a slip of tongue, and this is going all the way back to 2010.
Okay, so this is an old clip.
What's your belief about the reason the Civil War was fought?
I mean, again, I think that as we look in government, as we watch government, you have different sides. And I think that you see passions on different sides. And I don't think anyone does anything out of hate. I think what they do is they do things out of tradition and out of beliefs of what they believe is right. I think you had one side of the Civil War that was fighting for tradition, and I think you had another side of the Civil War that was fighting for change. So, you know, I think it was tradition versus change is the way I see it.
Tradition versus change on what?
On individual rights and liberty of people.
Okay, so I have so many problems. But to me, it is very, very apparent what she's doing both times. When she was asked in the recent clip, what is the cause of the Civil War? She knew exactly what not only is the truth, but what was expected of her. But yet she also knows that there is a whole group of donors, supporters, people that she's not allowed to say the S word. Okay?
Especially in South Carolina.
Exactly. Now, this is someone who was the governor of South Carolina.
The first state to secede from the Union when Lincoln won.
So to act in any way generic and obtuse about the Civil War, when you know damn well what it really was it is about the right to own humans as part of your economics. Yes, it was their economy. I get that, but they needed to own humans. That's the bottom line. This is what this was about. She knows damn well. But the truth is, what she's playing to is the same audience that in her mind, there's no way I'm getting elected governor of South Carolina if I call out slavery. That's just not going to happen. And it's the same thing. This was well thought out on her part to not say that word. It's almost like something you don't say if you want to rise in the Republican Party in the South. You don't say that. That's just what it was clear to me that she very purposefully sidestepped it.
South Carolina has always been the unofficial Dixie state. It was the first state that seceded from the Union. It's the first state that...
I've been to Fort Sumter.
Yeah, well, that's the start of the Revolutionary War. And so there are a lot of traditions in what you would... Yeah, that's right. But South Carolina is also where... it was the incubation stage for the revolution. A lot of people don't know that, or maybe a lot of people do. So there is a lot of deep-seated traditions in what I consider South Carolina to be the Antlebaum of the South, which it is in many ways. Their traditions have not changed. No. And even when they elect a brown woman as their governor, this is what is meant in many left circles when they say that just because you put a brown face on white supremacy doesn't mean that it changes.
They say it's like brown faces in high places, but the problem is that there's no way that you are going to be in the Republican Party in South Carolina and have any sort of criticism of slavery in the South.
And keep in mind, because I get really sick and tired of people, lampooning the Republican Party is that it's all the same everywhere. It's not. No. Okay. It just so happens that of all the states that get a significant say in the nominating process in the two major parties in this country, South Carolina has a undue amount of influence in the political process. Yeah. I can remember back in 2016 when Trump won, not when Trump won the New Hampshire primary, it was when Trump won in South Carolina that everyone started really taking his campaign seriously and thought that he was going to win the nomination. That was the watershed moment, not New Hampshire, that was South Carolina. And the same thing happened in 2016, well, more so 2020, when all of a sudden, I will bless you, Joe Biden, Jim Clyburn. Of course, they had their plan all along, but of course, Jim Clyburn anoints Biden, buries Bernie, and away you go. And so that's the undue influence of South Carolina politics.
And it is a big, and this is something that I learned when I went to the Stop Cop City event weekend and yes, that's Georgia. But one of the things in the South that is a huge problem is what this group, and yes, these are definitely the leftists, refer to as the Black misleadership class.
Yeah.
And the Black misleadership class is people like your, Stacey Abrams, Jim Clyburn, the people that basically will hold water for the Democratic Party despite
as long as they can rise in their career.
Right, and maintain their own position in that white structure, then they're fine maintaining it and they're fine keeping everybody down.
And this is really the whole point about saying slavery, because we still have slave labor. Like that still exists today.
I actually think it's even more than that. I think that just in general, for the most part. When you look at this country, anybody who is in that group of people where they couldn't afford a $400 emergency, anybody in that group of people is a slave.
Correct.
Those people are slaves to capital in a way where they will never get their feet under them and they will consistently forever be in that class. However, then there is also prison slavery, like
Correct.
literal prison slavery.
Donald,
So
the problem in South Carolina is not that everyone wants white supremacy.
No.
Quite frankly, most people overwhelmingly
No, that's
do
not
not
true.
want that. But there is a select group of people that basically pull the strings, and that is what they want.
and I'm saying,
So-
and I also very specifically said in the Republican Party.
Correct.
So when you're somebody
Well, no,
like
you get
Nikki
the
Haley and you're
yeah.
rising in the Republican Party, your message is not necessarily the same if
But
you're
the
a black
Democratic,
person rising in
the
there.
Democratic Party has it almost the same. The difference is in the Republican Party, it's much more overt. Like they will just come out and say, like, you're not going to say the word slavery.
Yeah.
Because if you think you're going to get the antebellum money, you're not getting it if you don't do what we say.
Are
like,
you trying to say antebellum?
antebellum? I'm sorry. Did I say antebellum? I'm sorry. Antebellum.
You make it sound like a Jewish person. Antebellum. Antebellum. Antebellum.
Antebellum. Yeah, that's good.
That's what it sounds like.
That is what it is. So yes, antebellum. My
Antebellum.
mistake. I'm a Yankee. What can I say?
You really are.
So
I'm weird in that way because what am I?
you're kind of a well.
I
You
am-
are born in the South.
I am
You really
technically
are.
born in the South, but
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, the people who live in Miami,
Brooklyn
wouldn't
and
have the
Philly
accent.
Jews.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't. The people of the South wouldn't claim you. Even if
No,
you
no,
technically
actually, I still have many times been referred to as a Yankee, even though I am literally born in the South.
I think you'll be very surprised as to how agreeable individuals are capable of being.
Yeah.
It's groups that are dangerous. See, for example, Nikki Haley is making this roundabout way of, I'm not saying slavery. And she's doing it in front of a group of people. Now, if she had done that in front of just one individual, that one individual is most likely going to say, no, it was slavery. And yet everyone is sitting in a group of, let's say, 50, 60 people that are there listening to her speak. And they're all like looking around being like, well, who's going to say that she's wrong? I'm not going to say it. Are you going to say it? Are you going
Right.
to say it? And that's the groupthink that becomes a problem. And that's the groupthink that becomes a problem when it comes to voting.
Well, and the other thing is, I'll say about voters, okay? Certain communities, and this is very unfortunately specifically true in Southern Black communities, okay? The voting community, the voters that come out and vote within that community tend to be of a certain Black demographic. A lot of it is very church-based and church-led, and a lot of times that church leadership is also part of that misleadership class. And
you don't like my music, we like you, but you do not know of what you speak.
well, it
Disagree.
depends on who. Yeah,
That's what
it,
they're talking.
and it depends on what group of people. I think it varies, but in general, when I look at somebody like Jim Clyburn, okay, this man has been in that seat forever,
I would
and it is like the poorest district in the country.
I would also say the same
And-
about John Lewis. John Lewis, who is a civil rights hero, two completely different people, from the young John Lewis to the man who sat in Congress for over 30 years.
The activist
Different
person
people.
and the person that ultimately falls in line with the party are very different, because at some point it's sort of like the party is working for you, you're in your position.
Now, speaking of South Carolina, if there's a person here who can talk about South Carolina, he was the president from South Carolina in a fictitious world.
Oh
of
my
course.
goodness.
But we cannot not talk about this interview.
And I
that
didn't
was taken very,
see it.
was taken very seriously for some reason. But enjoy.
But is it too late? Is there anyone in this country of 350 million people who could jump in at this late date and re-scramble the calculus of electoral politics? Well, there may be someone, and in fact, you already know him. You know his face. And the question is, will he get in this cycle? And that's my question for you.
Well, that's really a decision for the people, Tucker. It's not something that I really think about or want to do. And Merry Christmas to you, too. But I've always believed that nothing should be off the table in life or in art. I think we could both agree that we need to get some adults back in the room. So if that means taking on the chief executive role, well, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for this great nation.
You know, you and I have something in common, actually.
Oh, yes, we both got canned by our network.
True, but they actually tried to kill you.
Yes, but here we are, Tucker, bigger than ever.
So looking back on all the drama, do you think that legacy media played a role in what happened to you?
Look, I think they're trying to do their best to stay relevant. Look, platforms like X, I mean, you move information around so quick that everybody else is just playing catch up. Legacy media's diligence has turned out to be they just cut and paste what some trusted outlet does. I mean, look, this will be a good example. Watch how they report on this conversation. There'll be 1 or 2 headlines that get repeated over and over and over. I think actually if legacy media wants to survive, they're going to have to start slowing down.
That's smart. I agree with that. By the way, do you watch Netflix anymore?
Probably as much as you watch Fox.
Fair. So that doesn't mean that you're gone though from Netflix. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but every time a person pulls up the Netflix app, you're there in some way. Have you seen this?
Yes, you know what that is? Boom, boom. So it is bizarre that they decided to publicly cut ties with me on allegations alone, allegations that have now been proven false, because I don't think there's any question. Netflix exists because of me.
You know what else I know?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, but first of all, first and foremost, I love House of Cards, and I loved him in House of Cards, and I've liked him as an actor, and I really don't want to have any of my judgment of him be personal.
I mean, this is really impressive because, no, Rob, he's in character.
He was being Frank Underwood.
Yeah.
He was playing his House of Cards character in the interview. And let me tell you something, from a PR perspective, no, it wasn't a skit. Well, I guess it kind of was.
It's like real meta shit. Like, it's really...
He did the interview answering questions about Kevin Spacey's life in character as Frank Underwood. And not a
like
bad...
He's become Frank Underwood.
Well, the thing is, not a bad move from a PR perspective, from where Kevin Spacey is right now. It's sort of like people don't necessarily like him that much right now, or he's not necessarily so likable. So it makes sense maybe to do it as Frank Underwood. I mean, and again, disclaimer, I am a House of Cards fan.
So am I. I am not a fan of Kevin Spacey, and I'll tell you why. He is a phenomenal actor. I would never take that away from him. And he played a phenomenal role that he won several Emmys for, and rightfully so, just as he is a 2-time Oscar winner and was in some of the great films of the modern era, including Seven, including The Usual Suspects, and including American Beauty, which in my opinion, even though he won the Best Actor for that particular film, that's the third of those films, because the other 2 were even better. The Usual Suspects still to this day has one of the greatest twist endings out of any film I've ever seen. And
Kevin Spacey's an amazing actor.
With all that being said, this guy was tight, and I mean watertight, with Bill Clinton, and was on Epstein's Island probably more times than can be counted in the logs.
And so like, how do you know that? How do you know that Kevin Spacey was on the island?
It's been reported as such.
Okay. I mean, I haven't followed that much.
And so my point is, okay, so he comes out and he's been acquitted of the charges, but that doesn't mean he's innocent. That is why we have courts of law. There are people who get off from their crimes all the time.
And actually, that is kind of what that means.
What do you mean?
I mean, if you're found not guilty, that means that you are not guilty.
I guess, but...
Oh, no, I'm telling you exactly that's what that means.
You haven't proven your case beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's not his job to do so.
I know, I understand that. I'm not saying that I disagree with the court.
But then you are not guilty. Then in fact, you are. I mean, I guess what you're saying is there's a difference between being found not guilty and actually not being guilty, or a difference between not guilty and innocent, which, yes, there is a difference between those things. I mean, one is kind of a legal term and one is sort of a moral situation. But
the thing that was also interesting is Thomas Massie, our favorite resident Republican congressional member, he actually put out a tweet all the way back in 2015 when House of Cards was literally hitting its crescendo, if you will. And he said, and I quote, this is as accurate as it gets.
Yeah.
From the dressing, the mannerisms, the way that we go back and forth about policy, the way that the desks are, the chairs are, the way that these social gatherings are put together. And all I kept thinking is, does thou protest too much? Because that's kind of what I was thinking in terms of, there's no question that the Underwoods were portrayed to be the Clintons. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And there are those who look into that and think, well, how is that possible? I'm like, did you not see how Robin Wright portrayed herself in her character? I mean, she
Except
was.
I so prefer Claire Underwood to Hillary Clinton.
Well, sure, because Robin Wright's a great actress, but at the same time, there is no denying that reality that the Clintons were who that was modeled after.
No, and I'm just saying, literally, I prefer Claire Underwood. That character is still infinitely more preferable than Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Well, that Jay Boggs is right. You know, unfortunately, that is one of the, and that is going to be one of the legacies of the Me Too movement. You know, were there overwhelming amounts of women that told the truth and we're never going to see justice? Yeah, we do have a flawed legal system in this country. Do I think that, I mean, the motivation of why he did this, I mean, in some ways, I think it was a thumb in the eye. But then again, I
think it was just a safe way to do an interview for him.
I think that's true too.
To be in character. I think that like literally, and I think that actors have all sorts of weird mental shit about who they really are versus who they play and all sorts of weird stuff. And that's why I've got thoughts on that. But I think it was just a safe space for him to do that interview, was to be in character as Frank Underwood.
I think so too. Now you got to wonder if that's how he's going to portray himself going forward.
No.
Because, well, you never know.
No. Who is he? Andy Kaufman? No, that's George Santos.
Although you are convinced that Andy Kaufman is George Santos.
I am convinced that George Santos is Andy Kaufman.
You may be right about that one. So the final.
What do we have coming up besides that? So we have Saturday. We're going to do.
Well, I don't know what you guys think of the streamer Dylan Burns, but
I don't really know that much about him.
Well, I sent you the link to his page. You can check it out. So that is possible for next Thursday, and then on Monday the 8th we have
Catherine Bogan.
Yeah,
and if you guys aren't following Kate Bogan on Instagram, highly recommend. She's great.
So the last thing we're going to talk about is, of course, the main topic of almost every show that we do right now, because it's very important, especially for Jen. We have a genocide that is still raging.
Day 83.
Day 83. And now, as we reported on the live stream during Festivus, it has been reported that over 600,000 people are likely going to die from either starvation or disease. And so now
I think it's, again, I still don't think that. I think it's going to be I don't see how anybody gets out of there alive.
So we've got a handful of clips to show you, but we're going to start with the the king gangster of them all, which of course is Netanyahu. And so then we're going to see Mr. Shmuley.
Oh my God, the Shmuley! If you guys haven't seen it, stick around for the Shmuley video.
So here's what Netanyahu had to say on Christmas.
To our Christian friends around the world, Merry Christmas. Christmas is supposed to be a time of goodwill to all men and peace on earth. Well, we don't have peace on earth, not on our part anyway, and we certainly don't see goodwill to all men. We're facing monsters who murdered children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children, who raped and beheaded women, who burnt babies alive, who took babies hostages. This is a battle not only of Israel against these barbarians, it's a battle of civilization against barbarism. And I know in this that we have your support. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for your prayers. And I want to assure you that as we stand together, we will also prevail. We shall win this war and secure our common values and our common future. Thank you.
Yeah,
still going with that lie about burning babies.
You know what? I think less and less people are buying it. The people that buy it are the people in that particular bubble. And it is a pretty small bubble, to be honest with you, especially when you look at this globally.
Well, this next clip we're going to play, you're going to see exactly how desperate they're getting, because as we've both pointed out, the biggest detriment to RFK Jr.'s independent, I should stop saying third party, because it's not a third party.
Independent run.
His independent run for president is none other than Rabbi Shmuley.
So guys, if you haven't seen this video, well, you're jumping around like really fast. Like I'm still thinking about the Netanyahu thing.
Okay, oh, no, please.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, was there anything you wanted to say about the fact other than he's still, as of Christmas, lying about their genocide?
Well, I think if you look at the way Netanyahu is conducting himself, you look at a person who basically is a full-blown sociopath.
Oh, no. He's a psychopath. And I would also say a lot of what he's doing is complete self-preservation. He's in so much trouble He actually, you know, people here think Trump's in trouble. Yeah, Trump's in trouble. Netanyahu's in deep trouble. And the longer
Netanyahu is a real murderer. Like that's
well, you know, look,
now he's a genocidal murderer.
Yeah,
but you know who's
but so the longer he keeps this going, it's self-preservation on his part. But no, he's a psychopathic person. There's no doubt about it. That those are when people want to throw around labels, which I'm very hesitant to do. I look at someone like him, and he is fascist, and he is absolutely psychopathic. And so the idea that when people are like listening to that and thinking that that somehow is some news, none of that is news. And what's interesting is every single thing that he's claiming about the barbarism on the, you know, the Palestinian barbarism are all things that the IDF is doing either currently in Gaza or in the West Bank. And anybody who, I'm telling you guys out there, there are so many videos circulating around because not only are the IDF soldiers just so disgusting and despicable, they are so entitled. These people film themselves. They record themselves doing disgusting, absolutely entitled things, whether it's at Palestinian schools, whether it's mocking them for not having water, whatever it is. So imagine this. These are the things that they're filming themselves doing. Imagine what they're doing when they're not knowing they're being filmed.
And we're actually going to jump around because we're going to show none other than Eve Barlow, who's actually from Scotland, I believe. But yet somehow she's in Tel Aviv and a full-blown Zionist and a full-blown genocidal maniac. And yeah, well, you'll get the idea.
I went straight out on the balcony to smell that Tel Aviv air. To watch life. I'm so emotional right now. I don't know what to say other than if you're not Jewish and you're watching this, you're gonna think it's crazy that Jews like go bananas for being in a war zone and feel safe and happy in a war zone over anywhere else in the world. But I could not be happier right now. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is where we're supposed to be. This is home. So, Yotam, I think, would have been taken from his room before they burned the house because he was a hostage. So he was taken alive and unfortunately killed in an accident by the IDF. But this is his bedroom in his house in Kibbutz Kfar Aza. And I found this poster here. So maybe he was a Gorillaz fan. Wonder what he thinks of this.
I'm not sure what she was showing us and what that is. So at one point she was in Tel Aviv, but then the next part of the video, she seemed to be like at the kibbutz. I'm not sure what that was.
She is she really is a psychopath. Like, when she talks about us Jews love being in a war zone, no, what you love doing is killing Palestinians.
They feel very entitled to do so.
Oh,
they
my
feel
God.
very entitled to do so.
By the way, the count for the Palestinian deaths in terms of gunfire and bombing is over 22,000 now. So, you know, the number is going to keep climbing.
Again, I still don't see how this is coming out of this without 2 million dead people.
Well, according to Michael Rapaport, they should kill them all, apparently.
No, don't play that.
No,
I don't want to play that. You want to play the Shmuley thing, play the Shmuley thing. So guys, if you haven't yet seen this.
We're going to spare you the Michael Rapaport.
Yeah,
event.
there's no point.
But as you've pointed out, they really are running out of ways to explain this away.
And it looks like the facade is falling. So this is Rabbi Shmuley apparently, and Rabbi Shmuley is recording this as if he's being attacked by this like crazy anti-Semite. Right? Like he's putting this out there. Like, you see this guy's attacking me because he's anti-Semitic. And it's so absurd.
Turns out this was I think an Ashkenazi Jewish boy.
I don't know what, but it's just a kid and they're ice skating. Okay, So watch this video.
You're telling me free Palestine?
Yeah.
On the ice?
On the ice.
Really? That's the only thing you can think of? Harassing me on the ice?
And Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
You came over to me and said free
Palestine
Palestine on the ice. What's your name?
Yeah. You don't need to know my name.
Why? What are you afraid of?
I'm not afraid of anything.
This is going to be everywhere anyway.
Good.
You came over to me on the ice in Bryant Park and harassed me with free Palestine.
I said free Palestine. And I gave you a fist bump. And you didn't want to. Now you're recording me.
You are saying free Palestine knowing that it's an anti-Semitic slur to destroy Israel.
Not at all.
So you don't want to
I'm
destroy
saying liberate people.
Israel.
No, why would I want to destroy people?
So what do you want? Free
Palestine.
Palestine. What about from what?
Liberation of people.
You mean from Hamas, who are the
No,
terrorists?
I want to liberate people.
So you're okay.
I want the freedom of people.
With terrorists.
I want the end to a
So
genocide.
okay.
I want the end to
He's
a...
harassing
away,
me.
buddy.
He's harassing me.
See, he's harassing me. That's like that really reminds me of like our congressperson. Like everybody's an anti-Semite. You're harassing me. So the kid skates over to Rabbi Shmuley and says, "Free Palestine," and skates away. Okay, so whatever. You're harassing me.
I'm telling you, you know how this went down. He recognized it was Shmuley.
I'm sure.
And he said, "Hey, free Palestine."
But let me tell you,
that set him off like nobody's
But he
business.
clearly said it very kindly. He's like, "Oh, and Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah," or whatever. Like he was just—it's a kid. It was a kid ice skating, saying "Free Palestine" with the most smile on his face, and Shmuley is being—he's harassing me. And again, this is the thing. I am so sick of Jews playing the victim card and the anti-Semite card. Here's the thing. Again, people are allowed to not like you. They're allowed to not like you for a lot of reasons. They're allowed to not like you because you're Jewish. They are. They're allowed to not like you. They're allowed to be complete bigots. They're allowed to, and they're allowed to say it. And they're allowed to even tell you if you're out in public. And you know what? I understand that sometimes it hurts our feelings when people don't like us and say mean things to us. I understand that that hurts our feelings. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. So I kind of feel like, get the fuck over yourself. Not everybody's going to like you. People are going to say mean things. Not everybody likes Jews. Some people hate us. You know what? That's life. That's also free speech. That's what it's like living in this world.
And can we just say that when somebody like Shmuley says that saying "Free Palestine" is anti-Semitic, it's like,
infuriating.
You've not only ran out of options, but you are making it so much more difficult for Jewish people as a whole, and you know you're doing that. But when you feel like you're a protected class, you'll do whatever the frick you think you have to do in order to push your political agenda.
I know, Teresa, right? He was adorable. So, but the thing is, it's like, if you're going to be a public person like Shmuley, you're going to be a public person. And quite honestly, even if you're not and you're just out in public, and that is something that you consider harassment, don't go out.
I'm telling you.
Just don't go out. You will not survive this world.
If you guys just put two and two together, it's very simple. He clearly recognized Shmuley at the ice skating rink in Central Park. And he went over to him and said, "Free Palestine." And that sent Shmuley into a rage. And he couldn't take it. And he decided to start recording on his phone and be like, "Hey, this guy was harassing me."
Right.
It's like,
because he skated by and said something that you didn't like that you have now been trying to tell people is anti-Semitic.
But isn't that also true of somebody who knows that they're deep down that they're guilty, that they are responsible for the deaths of...
They're out of ideas. But my suggestion is this. First of all, free Palestine. The fact that anybody somehow takes that to mean the genocide of another group of people shows their projection of their genocidal tendencies. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But they need help. If one group's freedom implies to you your death, get some help for that. Okay, that is a problem. But even if, let's say hypothetically, the kid skated by him in a public place and said, "Jews suck." Okay, let's say that he said something that was anti-Semitic or just hateful.
So
exactly. Did he come up and look like you were going to be hurt? Did somebody get in your face and assault you and make you feel that you were going to be threatened physically in some way? Because if not, I don't care what they said.
It is a reflection of the digital age where people are extremely introverted to a point of sickness, to a point where they can't actually communicate properly in the real world. And in some ways, these are people that are just taking advantage of the situation. Shmuley has no moral compass whatsoever.
No.
He has a Zionist agenda. He's always had it. I gave him credit when he gave his speech introducing RFK in Philadelphia right after October 7th. And that particular speech was one that espoused peace, not, "Hey, let's go destroy the Palestinians or destroy..."
Yeah, but looking at his entire career, I think it's safe to say we know that. Like that's a one-off.
Well, that was a situation where I think because of the fact, here's the thing, Shmuley was smart enough to recognize that a significant portion of the pro-RFK crowd is anti-war and certainly anti this shit. So he was smart enough
Yeah.
not to go and basically say, yeah, we have to blah, 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 because that would not have been
Right.
received
No, they're
well with that
definitely
crowd.
anti-military.
So that, to me, that's a good answer. You don't like my music. I'll give you that. You see?
And
That's
fine.
and that's that's an example of, instead of censoring speech, you have better speech.
Right. But it's like the idea that somehow we are entitled to walk around without ever having our feelings hurt is absurd to me. That is just not, and let me tell you, this is when I feel like I so love, exactly. Well, that's true. But again, even if it were anti-Semitic speech, I don't care.
And that's
Let
the problem.
people say what they want to say. So it hurts your feelings. Walk away.
And that's the big problem with Wasserman Schultz, because she was the champion of the legislation that says that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah.
So by law, technically, Shmuley's not wrong. He's like, oh, you're anti-Zionist.
And that's what they're trying to create is this situation.
Oh, absolutely.
But you know what? We reject that. I will always reject that. That is clearly not true. They can say whatever they want to say. I will not be gaslit. And I don't care about people's feelings. And I honestly, but I don't care about hate speech. Hate crimes I care about. You kill somebody because of that. Oh, by all means, add every single addition on that. Add every single, enhancement on that crime as possible. But speech is speech. And I'm just not one of those people that thinks everybody's entitled to not have their feelings hurt in this world. That's not what you're entitled to. You have no right to not have your feelings hurt.
I just look forward to Shmuley burning out his political capital completely. Because the second that RFK, if he ever comes to his senses, or maybe there's something more to it that we're just not aware of. But if RFK ever did come to his senses, he would cut ties with Shmuley. And that would help his campaign exponentially, because there's no question that so much of the talking points, like what was it that he was saying, the knockers, if you will, saying that they were being the Palestinians were being warned that they were going to be known ahead of time that their particular home was going to be bombed.
Unbelievable.
Oh, and they're the most pampered people in society.
He's too far gone for even having a reasonable discussion about it at this point.
The idea that you are basically just being a mouthpiece for Shmuley, which is what you're doing.
It's not good.
No, it's terrible.
It is. It's bad.
So RFK, wake the fuck up and get rid of Shmuley.
Shmuley's horrible.
This is only going to get worse. And the more that the walls close in with people saying that enough is enough, but it kind of brings everything full circle in the sense that the overwhelming majority of people look at what's happening right now, they reject it, they don't want any part of it, and yet our government, specifically our president, is going right along with it. I don't give a fuck.
And the amount of stifling and censorship and really kind of creepy shit that's going on surrounding this is really at an all-time high. And in fact, you had wanted to talk about that I am now being followed by a couple of new individuals.
Well, clearly the things that Jen has been saying on social media, guys.
Just so you guys are aware.
And I'm just going to pull it up so you guys know who these guys are. Because you always go on offense with these fucks. You never play
just guys be aware. I am being followed now. I don't mean that in a literal sense. I don't think so. But online by two people that apparently are members of Israel's foreign consul in Miami. And these guys are...
Oh, this is Israel foreign intelligence shit. This is the real thing.
And now these guys are following me.
So should I even say his name?
No, we don't need to.
So a proud Jew, father, DCM in Miami, ex-DCM in Costa Rica, so you know how this thing really gets around, combining tech and diplomacy at the Israel Foreign Ministry. And this person's now following Jen on social media. And then there was another person.
And they're both local.
They're both local.
They're both out of Miami.
100%.
Work for Israel out of Miami. And I mean, we definitely have a large Israeli population in Florida. Not a surprise. And there's always been a very, very strong tie to JNF, the Federation.
Then there was another person who's also part of the Israel Foreign Ministry who decided to comment on a tweet that was retweeted by John Cusack. Israel is committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, and my congresswoman has a big hand in it.
That was the tweet.
Yeah, where's the lie? So one of the Israel Foreign Ministry members decided to say, you should be ashamed of this reply. Not only that it proves you know nothing about what's going on in Gaza, you also prove you don't know what the term genocide is actually means, and you degrade and trivialize it. Well, Mr. Israel Foreign Ministry member, I am actually going to now quote Ryan Grimm, because Ryan Grimm of The Intercept had a tweet earlier today that is very, very important.
Oh, at this point, so many different academics, experts, people that study genocide have already commented that this is absolutely textbook genocide. The fact that somebody would even come on and say that is just stupid.
Yeah.
You're just not serious. You're not a serious person. I'm not having that discussion with you. I am not defining whether or not this is or is not genocide. That's a done deal. We know that. It is. Experts have spoken. People who have written books and studied genocide for centuries, who have studied what it looks like, have said this is what it is. The majority of the United Nations have said that's what's happening. Everybody in the world has said that's what's happening. And yet they still want to debate that I don't know what I'm talking about by using that word. You've run out of arguments. You have run out of ideas.
I can't find the person's name, but basically it is an Israeli, it is a high-ranking member of Israeli, I guess, intelligence who wanted to remain anonymous, but said it's textbook genocide. Like, that's what's happening.
Yes.
Textbook
That's not, look, there are people that's what they do is study that and have clearly stated that. So the only people that are saying it's not that are the people that have something to gain by it saying it's not that. Everybody else recognizes it. So that's not a discussion I'm having. That's just stupid.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they really did come on and chat in the audience and let us know that's what they're thinking. But bottom line, we are on the right side of history.
Oh,
it's just a shame that there are tens of thousands, if not soon to be, as tragic as it is to say, hundreds of thousands of innocent people's blood spilled, and it will be spilled.
I still don't see how we get out of this without 2 million dead people. I just don't see how that happens, because it's just a matter of time. So we're on day 83, okay? And the reality is that it can linger. This can go on for a very long time. But at the end of the day, when you have people, whether they're living in camps in rubble or living in the desert in camps, the amount of death that will occur as a result of the original crime, that what has been set in motion to me at this point, again, and I've been saying this, nobody can tell me I don't understand. I've asked my husband this. He's a physician. I figure he might have an understanding about like death and destruction, but no. I see the healthcare workers on the ground. They're describing the conditions. I don't see how people can survive that even if they're not bombed. You get a cold, you get infection, they don't have burn ointment. So the amount of people that are injured that are going to be like, again, I don't see how this is not 2.2 million dead bodies in the desert.
It was already reported today that an IDF soldier has died from some type of disease. So clearly it's going to get really bad. And it's already really bad, but it can actually get really worse.
I honestly, I just think the only thing that gets worse is just the time of it dragging on. But I do not see how anybody can get saved in this situation.
We will be on with Jordan Chariton on Status Coup at 4 p.m. on Saturday to close out 2024. We will then do a quick post-game debrief on our channel for the final time in 2023. And I know everyone says, oh, I can't wait to get out of this year. It's a terrible year.
We say that every year, people.
Yeah,
every year we say
24 is going to be even worse. So until we recognize that we have a broken economic and political system and that it needs to change in a fundamental way, it's only going to get worse. So just keep speaking truth to power. We'll do what we can on our small but mighty channel. And who knows? Maybe there'll be opportunities for more in 2024.
Exactly. You don't like my music. Exactly. Genocide. And when people use the argument that it's not a genocide if their population is increasing, that's still not true. That's just not true. That is, the truth is that a genocide, and there's a few different definitions, but they all are pretty much the same. Like if you look up the definition of genocide, there's parts of it. But right now, currently, our president, our Secretary of State, and our Secretary of Defense are being sued for their participation and contribution to a genocide as defined by every international agency and human rights organization on planet Earth. So it's sort of like one of those things like 4 out of 5 dentists, but we're going to go with the 5th dentist. I don't understand. Like, we're not going to discuss.
It's a real thing. I'm going to talk to the one libertarian because he says
right. No, the MMT. But we'll look into that. We'll look into using that.
Smash the like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Donald James, Teresa, you don't like my music.
Nelson. I know.
Nelson Ortega.
I don't know how.
Jay Bogues. JD Party had with some really good commentary tonight. Some of our regulars were not here, but they'll find out eventually. Chris Garrett, Mark Fabian. Connie John, Rob Baxter, Echo Bill.
Oh, Festivus
Danny
envelopes
Wingo.
are going to go out tomorrow.
Asmuth, Rob Baxter. You guys have all been fantastic. So thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful evening. See you Saturday for Status Coup. And if not, have a happy New Year.